always say I think brands are the next editor-in-chief because brands have so much influence and opportunity to be able to help serve their audiences with, whatever it is that their products or services can help them with.
Welcome to the Storycraft Podcast for Storytellers. I'm your host, Meg Adams, and I'm here to help you explore how stories shape our connections. Wondering how stories help you network in advance? Looking to bridge online and face-to-face worlds, foster understanding, and ignite innovation? Look no further. Whether you're a leader, communicator, educator, or just love a good story, join us for actionable insights and real talk with professional storytellers, all aimed at helping you build stronger, better connections.
So we are here today with Sarah. Sarah is one, I forget how we met, but I know it was online. I was trying to talk to my husband about this yesterday.
I think we first met when I joined your Facebook group.
That's right.
And then I was following your Facebook group, and then we had connected there, and we're like, maybe we should actually talk. And then we did a virtual talk like this where we got to see each other, and we just kind of clicked and hit it off from there. So yeah, I think that's how it started.
Yeah, that was awesome. So just for context, could you tell, we'll start off by, can you tell our listeners what you do and how you came to a career in storytelling?
Yeah, definitely. So generally what I do, like marketers, business owners, communication professionals, they'll generally come to me now because they don't have enough time, or they don't have the right skills, or they don't have enough people to like actually help them with their content strategy. So I help them with content strategy and storytelling plans and things like that, using a bunch of different frameworks and methods, which some we're going to talk about today, to really help them clarify, what the heck should I talk about? What should I be focusing on? So that they can then kind of check that off their to-do list and work on driving, more better engagements, more leads for their brands with content that their audience actually wants to consume. And I help industries and brands of all types. Recently, I've niched in to really serve brands that love to target moms, because moms are influence or control 85% of all household purchases. So it's a huge market, even if it's not a company's sole customer, but it's a big audience that they should figure out how to talk to. But what I do then is helping with those clear messaging frameworks and plans and things like that. So I got into storytelling first because way back when I started my career in PR. And it really, throughout my 20 plus year career, I've worked agency, I worked corporate, and then now I run my own consulting business. I've done all the hats. And no matter what I've done, like when I was back in the agency world, as is so fun, right? You get to work with all sorts of different brands and different clients and kind of get your hands in a lot of different things. And so I led PR and cause marketing and different content marketing and social and influencer marketing. Social was just starting. Like we were just thinking of social at that time. And worked for great brands, including like Nestle Waters and Starbucks and Lindt Chocolate. And I worked in the bridal industry in New York. And then I went into corporate at Sleep Number. Sleep Number is $1 billion sleep wellness company. You may have heard of like Sleep 360 smart beds, like their smart beds that they have. So I ran content marketing strategy for them for 12 years and then consulted for another 2. So in total, I worked with them for 14 years. So a big chunk of my life. And I used to run their social team. I was PR and then social and influencer marketing, content strategy, and all those things. And so what I've realized through like my background of working for other people and then now running my own business is that everything has always had this thread of content and communications and storytelling. And what I love about it is because the story and the content, when you're creating that type of content, it's what really helps you better connect with your audience. So I love the connections because I feel that we are so devoid of actual connections with people. And as brands, whether you run your own business or you're working for someone else, helping them with their, storytelling and their content, I think brands have such a huge, I always say, I think brands are the next editor-in-chief because brands have so much influence and opportunity to be able to help serve their audiences with, whatever it is that their products or services can help them with. And so I just love that connection point. It just feels like such a nice, natural, authentic way to communicate with audiences. And so I really leaned into storytelling. Throughout the years, I've also become certified as a story brand guide, which we can get into more later. What the heck is that? But it's really just all about how do we on both hats? I love helping the professional themselves get clear and have more sanity in their job of thinking through what the heck should we be doing. And then I love helping make that connection then with their consumers who's buying their products or services to actually get more useful information and the help that they need from this brand that can help solve their problems. So I just love that connection point.
I thank you for that. That was a lovely summary of why you do what you do and sort of leads into like how you do it. But one of the things that stood out to me when we met, Sarah, and I was so excited to meet you and talk with you, was your brand, which is marketing with empathy. I mean, that seems to be
Mhm.
the thread in all you do. And so you kind of answered this a little bit, but I'm going to ask it anyways. What do you think the benefit is to brands that do really lead out with empathy, which is really one of
Mhm.
those goals of storytelling?
Yeah, so I do have a podcast called Marketing with Empathy as
I
well, to
love
your
it. I love
point,
it.
where we get
Everybody should
deep into
listen to
that.
it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's great.
So, why I pick empathy and why I talk about empathy and why it's in one of my methods that I do with all my clients is because empathy. So, there's a couple ways that people think about empathy. How I talk about empathy is like a cognitive empathy. It's trying to understand what someone else is thinking or feeling. We're not mind readers. We're not going to know what everyone's
Mhm.
like thinking like all the time, but it's like we're trying to. And so, there's certain ways that we can do that by looking at clues and cues to get more into like the psyche of our target audience that we're trying to reach. And it's just so important because then when we do, it's like it's that connection. It's like the
Mhm.
customer will be like, "Oh, yeah, they get me." Or, "Oh, yeah, it helps them lean in and want to know more from a brand." So that's why I think empathy is so critical because otherwise you're tone deaf. You're just talking to yourself. You're not actually
Mhm.
resonating. You're spending a lot of time and money probably creating content that isn't working, and that is just wasting people's time to create because it takes a lot of time, as you know, to actually make this content and put the
Yes.
brain power behind what we're going to be
Yes.
doing from a story perspective. And so, it's just so important on all levels for like employee satisfaction as well as customer satisfaction.
Yeah, no, I love that. Thank you. Uh, I want to get into too what I was again really pumped to talk to you about today was tell us about how we do this. So you have a method that you teach to your clients when you work
Mhm,
with brands, or like for the listeners here, like if you're a solopreneur, small business
mhm,
owner, like this can work. Tell us about how we connect with audiences so we're not wasting our time because I hear this all the time, Sarah.
mhm,
Uh, it's just not worth my time or things aren't moving and there are so many. I think it is overwhelming. I think
mhm.
if you are not using a strategic approach or you don't understand your consumer or your message, or your purpose really, that it can be hard
Yes,
and really, as you mentioned, time and financially consuming. So tell us
yes.
how you help people.
Yeah. So I think of it like a 1-2 punch. So with all my clients, I start by doing a messaging strategy session. So for like, and to your point, no matter what size business you have or how many people you have on your team or don't have on your team, this thinking will work for everyone, okay?
Awesome, thank
But
you.
I yeah, so the 1-2 punch though really is like the messaging strategy first is where, the story brand aspect comes
Mhm.
in, and then after we have clarity around those core foundational messages, then we can go deeper into the storytelling aspect, which is where my FED method, FED,
Okay.
comes in. So, you okay if I
Yep.
talk about story brand first, and then we
Absolutely,
can
I
go
love
into
that,
my FED
thank you.
method? Okay.
Perfect.
So just like as if someone's pretend you're my client listening right now.
Yay.
So with story brand, so it doesn't matter if you know what story brand is or not. This is totally fine because I'm going to talk through it with you. But story brand was created by a very intelligent man named Donald Miller, and he has a book called Building a Story Brand. So folks, if you're interested in this and you want to dig
Mhm,
a little bit deeper, it's a very inexpensive way to explore this further. Is just buying the book.
mhm,
But really the framework of this was started around the movie industry, which is when people have to create scripts and ideas for movies and they have to pitch them and get all this funding to make a movie. It's really quick, it has to be punchy. How do they get the attention? And so this is rooted in that, but also just hundreds of years of different insights around what makes a good story. And the biggest thing is there's 7 parts. So I'll just top line the 7 parts,
mhm.
and feel free to ask me questions if you want to dig into any of these more. But the
Thank you.
first is that, every story starts with a character. So, hey, Bran, your character, you listening, is your audience, whoever you're trying to sell to. And so that character then has to have a problem. And without a problem, there really is no story. It's not that interesting, right? We watch kind of things because, and as consumers ourselves, if we just put our consumer
Mm-hmm.
hat on, generally everything we buy is solving some type of a problem, whether it's a really big problem or if it's super small, like I'm thirsty and I need to buy a drink. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's the whole gamut of things that we're trying to solve in our life, and we're buying things to solve those problems. And so it's really important as a company and as a professional to be thinking about what is it that your audience is going through right now. And this is a big part of empathy, right? Is like
Mm-hmm.
thinking through, okay, well, what are their problems? What are they facing? And with problems, there's like three different types of problems you can think about. There is the external problem, like what is preventing them from, being successful? Like what is standing in their way, like a physical external thing. There's the internal problem, which is how are they feeling about this? And then there's the philosophical problem of, well, why do you think that that's just plain wrong, that they have to even deal with this problem, as
Mm-hmm.
a company? And so you can think about those three different ways to be able to talk to the different aspects of what and think through and try to just assess, well, what is like our customer going through related to these things? So we have a character, they have a problem. Well, then they need a guide. Okay. And the guide
Mm-hmm.
is you. You're the professional, the company, the brand that is can help them. You are a couple steps ahead of them. Maybe you've been in their shoes before. You have a product or service that can actually solve this problem that they have. Like they can look to you for help because you're like that person. And so in every movie, like there's always some guide that helps the hero, that main
Mm-hmm.
character with their problem. And so this is kind of foundationally where most companies get their stories wrong in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
because what I see, right, is we're really good as companies and are really good about talking all about their products and services and like features and benefits and details. But where the story aspect gets lost is like that's just boring by itself. So what we need to do is, instead of talking all about ourselves first, we talk about the customer, we talk about that hero and their problem first. Then we get into us as a guide who can help them. So that's like
Mm-hmm.
such a simple flip, is I would say for everyone listening, if you're looking at your content and thinking about what you're talking about, and if every single piece is always starting with you, just add like a section at the top or an intro or something that's first talking about the customer, what their problem is, because you got to hook them. You have to hook
Mm-hmm.
them in the beginning to be interested of like, oh yeah, I have that problem. Okay, I'm going to lean in now. You tell me more about what you got. Let's see if
Mm-hmm.
this is going to be a good fit or not. So then step 4 is then that guide, you, the company, the expert, the brand, you are then going to give them a plan. And a plan is really simple as like 1, 2, 3. Like, what do you do as like a next step? Because at this point in the storyline, that you've got this person interested. They're like, okay, I have this problem. Okay, guide, you're telling me what you have and why I can trust you, like maybe through great testimonials and some authority markers of you've been doing this for a while and this sounds interesting. But then they get to the place of, are they going to schedule that call with you? Are they going to click buy? Are they going to click whatever, right? To do your product or service? And there's a risk. Like we all associate it. And so I like to tell people, think of it like at this point in the journey, your customer is coming up to like a rushing creek. You're walking through the woods and there's this big rushing creek, and it's kind of scary, and you're like, I'm not going to try to cross all that rushing water. I could drown. Like that's scary. Well, metaphorically, as a customer, the risk is that where they're like, well, I don't know if I want to try to cross the other side because maybe I could lose money, I could make a bad decision, this could be ruin my reputation, like it's going to take a lot of time. There's all these questions in our head that stop us from actually taking the next step with a company or a
Mm-hmm.
person to do these things. And so, but the plan at this point is, well, how do we give them 3 stepping stones? So imagine you're looking at that rushing creek, but a little bit down the way, you see a narrowing and there's 3 big rocks that someone can walk across to actually cross. boom, we've
Yeah.
given them that nice little bread
Mhm.
trail, to be able to
Love it.
cross. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we'll think like 1, 2, 3, step one, step two, step three. Here's like really simple things to do from just to get you across to that next step.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we call them to action. We have to call them, obviously, we have to ask them to
Mhm.
do the thing, whether it's to buy or to schedule a call or whatever that may be. But at this step, what I say is this is another step where a lot of companies are missing an opportunity because the simple call to action is to ask them to, like the examples I just gave.
Yep.
But there's also a transitional call to action because at this point in the game, depending on what you're offering, this person might be completely interested. They've crossed that Russian Creek. They're interested, but for whatever reason, they're not able to buy at that point in time.
Mm.
Budget reasons, they may have to get approval from
Mhm.
a lot of people, or maybe it was just coming out of summer months where they had their kids the whole summer and they just couldn't devote any more brain power to a topic until like the fall. There's so many
Right.
different reasons that we just
Yeah.
can't buy something in that moment. So we need a transitional call to action at this point in time as well. So a transitional call to action, easiest way to think about it is like a freebie. What is a
Mhm.
way
Mhm.
that if you don't want them to leave your site and forget all about you and never come back. You want to find that
Mhm.
opportunity to be able to keep communicating to them, to be telling stories and things, to be getting, them engaged over time. So think about a freebie of some kind that you can offer them at this point. It's like, hey, buy this thing or do this what you want them to do. But in the meantime, download our free PDF on XYZ or take this quick
Mhm.
quiz on blah blah blah.
Mhm.
So then you're getting their email address and then you can keep connecting with them and staying top of mind so that down the road when they are ready to buy, they don't forget who the heck was that brand again? What was that person's name? You want to stay top of mind by being in their inbox. So that's step 5. And then the last two steps, 6 and 7, is all of these things then are going to help result in that person, that customer, that hero, either being successful or failure. So success or failure. And we need
Mm.
to talk about both of those in the storyline
Mhm.
because it helps cast the picture of what are the stakes of if I do or don't do business with this company. What will
Mhm.
success look like? Your vision casting. What will success look
Mhm.
like in the short term if I buy this thing, if I use these services? Or what does failure look like? Am I going to stay status quo? Am I going to, there's all these kind of things that we can think about. And it's important to talk about both because it just helps the customer then picture themselves in the light and it's more of a motivator. So that's kind of the first step as we
Mhm.
go
Mhm.
through those 7 steps. And there is a great free tool online as well that people,
Oh,
if you
cool.
want to play around with these 7 steps, it's
Mhm.
called mystorybrand.com.
Great. Yeah.
mystorybrand.com. So yeah, so you can just create just do an outline and it helps you just intentionally think about, well, what are the foundational aspects about our
Mhm.
customer, their problems, and all the things that I just mentioned. So that's where
Mhm.
I recommend we need to start because it lays the
Mhm.
foundation. And if you have multiple types of customer segments,
Yeah.
do this for each one of them. Just think of
Yeah.
your biggest blocks. But I would say if that sounds overwhelming, start with low hanging fruit. Who's the biggest percentage of your customer segment? Do this
Uh-huh.
for them first. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's going to get you in the right mindset for the next step, which is developing those deeper storytelling strategies. Because
Mhm.
if we don't know the foundational aspects first, we can't go deep because we're just going to be like all over the place. And
Yes.
I've been there. I've worked in corporate where there's like so many ideas coming at you from everyone, and you're like, hold up, like what are our
Well,
focus areas? What the heck are we
yes.
talking about? Yeah.
I love that you're saying this because I think a lot of listeners are going to identify with that. And when I talk to people, whether it's students or clients, they always start with tactics. Like, we could do this new brand video, or we
Yes.
need
Yeah.
to do content here. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's get those two pieces, which are really essential, like your messaging, but your in your purpose, and then
Mhm.
your audience. Who are you talking to? So I have a question for you here. At this stage of the process, how do you, and I don't know if you do this, Sarah, so
Yeah.
but how do you engage in any social listening or like testing of audience to make sure that, because that it's working? And I think that even if that's just like experimental content, like just to figure out if things are working or not working or adjust the strategy, do you
Mhm.
advise that, or is that just sometimes I think I complicate things,
Yeah.
Sarah?
No, absolutely. So whatever content you're making, I highly recommend. uh, you get it out there and you learn.
Yeah.
And I've worked with brands of a lot of different sizes, right? So if you're a really big brand, you
Hmm.
could carve this out as like a separate campaign and put the ad
Yeah.
budget behind it and push it out and see how it compares, kind of do like an A/B test of how it compares to other content
Hmm.
that you have live, and
Hmm.
then shift dollars to what's working the best. If you're a smaller company, you're like, I don't have that. Like you could just get it out there and look for the reactions and start seeing how people are reacting to like the tone of what you're saying. Is it resonating? Are you getting comments? Thinking about like lighter kind of metrics that you can see
Hmm.
in terms of is it clicking? Is it connecting?
Hmm.
And that would be kind of the two ends of the spectrum, I would say, from big to small sizes of
Hmm.
businesses and people. But 100%. My
Hmm.
big thing is, and what I've learned over time, obviously, is um, just don't sit on it and do nothing with it, because then you're learning zilch. You're never going to learn
Yeah.
anything by not never getting it out there. And you may try like a whole angle and be like, gosh, this part isn't resonating, but everything about this is, except this how we're starting it. People
Hmm.
just aren't really clicking. They're not thinking that that's their problem. We thought this was their problem, but
Right.
they're coming back and saying, no, that actually isn't our problem. And so
Hmm.
that's fine. Great. Change it. And so
Yeah. Right.
this
You
is this
learn.
is yeah, like don't what I will say, from every single brand of every size is always wondering what they should talk about. Is it or isn't it going to work? They don't want to Nobody wants to waste money, nobody wants to waste
Hmm.
time, but
Hmm.
you have to get some things out before you can react. And I would say as well as give it time to breathe when it's out there. You're not going to know for sure in 1 week. It's too fast. You need to I always say, let things breathe at least a month. And if you could do a
Hmm.
quarter for like, if you do a lot of different content updates, give it a quarter to react before you decide
Yep.
if you're going to pull it or keep it. Because depending on the channels and where you're sharing, sometimes things need that much time to breathe and
Hmm.
to grow.
Yeah.
But to your point around, data and auditing and listening, then 100% that comes into my Fed method,
Okay.
with
Great.
focus, empathy, and data. So I
Okay.
can talk
Yeah.
more about that if you
Yeah, I'd
want. It's
love to.
actually
Yeah, I think we're ready. Yeah, I'm just
okay.
curious because I think like I've seen this in my own in my own like journey as a, with the business and then consulting as well. And I see it with a lot of clients. I see this like there's one of those two things just is a little off, right? It's either the audience or the message. And I
Mhm.
think that can not only does that overwhelm people, but it can help it can make them think that, oh, there's no point. Like this isn't working, and they throw the baby out with the bathwater, if you
Yeah.
will.
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, it just takes some time. And sometimes it's just a slight adjustment, and that's okay. But
Mhm.
also, like you said, you're never gonna figure that out if you don't try, if you don't
Yep.
start somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there can be a huge disconnect between like the
Hmm.
customer and the message. So thankfully, most of the companies I work with, all the companies I've worked with, have had a really clear vision of who their target customer is.
Hmm.
Where they've lacked is trying to understand them better and how to
Okay.
actually what they should say to them.
Yeah.
But if you're not quite sure who your right audience should be too, I mean, the research aspect behind it can help you. So I'll talk
Hmm.
through Fed. Let me talk through the Fed
Okay.
method
Let's do it.
and see. Hopefully, this will help you guys as you're
Okay.
listening. So this is how I talked about, like, first we did the foundational stuff. We got to like get our
Hmm.
bearings straight and figure
Yeah.
out what we're going to do. I actually visually, when I work with folks, I say picture it like the blueprint of a house.
Hmm.
The first floor is this messaging strategy. We got to get the
Right.
foundational aspects down first before we can go deeper. The
Right.
second level is this like blueprint, brand storytelling blueprint around now how do we go deeper? Like what should our
Mhm.
storytelling pillars be and how do we expand that throughout the year? And then like the roof is how you scale, like beyond
Oh,
and
I
how we
love
push
that.
it out. So it's just like a simple visual, like
Yeah.
of thinking of like a two-story house. So the Fed method, FED, focus, empathy, and data, and how they all work together. So I think of storytelling and content strategies a lot like just our own bodies as human beings. We need sleep, exercise, and nutrition to survive. Well, I think storytelling content strategies need three things too. We need focus, empathy, and data.
I
And
love
so,
that.
and it's the merge of the three is
Uh-huh.
what helps it. And this is the beauty of the art of blending empathy and data in storytelling and using that to help drive sales for your company. And so, with focus, the first one, this is where I believe that every company of all sizes should have 3 storytelling pillars for their brand. And this is to allow you to be able to focus on what are we actually going to talk about for this year, and how do we focus my own time or the team's time around these areas that are going to
Mm.
support the business goals.
Mhm.
So then the question is, well, how do I how do I think about 3 storytelling pillars? And so I would recommend, like, pretend you're a magazine and you are out talking to someone and they're like, "Oh, what does your magazine cover?" And you're like, "Oh, well, my magazine talks about X, Y, and Z." That's, as a brand, like, how you want to get focused and clear. You don't want to have 10, 12 things that you're trying to talk about for the year, because
Right.
you're not gonna have enough time to do it all, and your audience is gonna be very confused on what the heck,
You
what
do.
you stand for. They're not gonna know what
Yeah.
bucket to put you in their mind.
Yes.
And so with the storytelling pillars, and these things kinda all work together, because sometimes as a company, you have really clear vision around, "Oh, well, I know," like, for me, for example, for my own brand, I know that content marketing is a big aspect of what I talk about. That's like a nice big umbrella. That's one of my pillars that I can talk about.
Mhm.
Um, so, and then for other, so I know that I can start there. Other people are like, I don't really know what our 3 storytelling pillars should be. So then we'll start with all the data and the research first, and empathy
Mhm.
filters to inform what we should talk about.
Mhm.
So as I'm talking about these, the order is interchangeable and it kind of goes back and forth. But ultimately what you want to think about is these, like, overarching umbrellas of which types of content can fall underneath. So once you've identified your 3 storytelling pillars, then underneath that, you can list out and say, okay, well, if it's about content marketing, as an example, then what types of things will I be creating under that bucket? And you would list out maybe like 5 different buckets or 3 different
Mhm.
buckets, right?
Okay.
And as you go through it, you can say, okay, are my pillars different enough from each other? Like, they're not like all saying the same thing, because if that's the case, then that's just really one pillar. It's not 3 separate
Mhm.
pillars.
Mhm.
My recommendation is to have, 2 that are spot on for your business in terms of what you do and what you offer and what you like to talk about. And then the third pillar to be a bit of a wild card. And what I mean by that is,
I like that.
the wild card is what makes you you.
Mhm.
It's the differentiator of your brand. Otherwise, we're just cookie cutters of everyone else. So, like, for me, there's a lot of content marketing strategists and storytelling strategists out there. We talk about a lot of different things, right? What is gonna be something that's unique to me? So for me, it's actually child trafficking, and I'm a huge advocate of, child trafficking awareness, advocacy work, and reducing online exploitation of kids. I donate a percentage of all of my profits to this great nonprofit called IJM to support child rescuing, trafficking
Mhm.
missions. And I'm actually just going to be launching a new podcast called Keep Kids Safe, where I dig into all
Oh,
these topics more. It's really
awesome.
a passion point for me.
Yeah.
That's different. It has absolutely zero to do with my day to day and what I'm doing with my clients, but that's about me. And that's a
Mhm.
differentiator for me. So for me, my third pillar is child trafficking.
Hmm.
It's a percentage of the content I talk about. It's not the majority of what I'm talking about, but it is something specific to me that's a bit of my wild card.
Yeah, I like
When I
that.
worked for Sleep Number back in the day running their content strategy, when we were going through the pillars exercises, the wild card there was actually, sleep science. So at the
Hmm.
time, other mattresses and competitors were just, there was no technology or insights or anything like that that the mattress did. So that was their differentiator, is that they have these smart beds that actually can help you understand when and how you're sleeping and what changes you should make to sleep better, and actually can do changes just for you while you're sleeping. You don't even have to do anything. But it's the
Mhm.
technological and the science behind it. And they
Hmm.
had some cool partnerships with Mayo Clinic around different studies and things like that that they were doing. So that was where that pillar was, where we were going to really geek out on, like, tech and science and things
Yeah.
like that that were different from how the rest of the mattress industry would talk about
Mhm.
their mattresses, as an
Yep.
example. Yeah. So that's where you would want to, you think ultimately the end goal is 3 storytelling pillars. What's the name? And then, like, a couple sentence description underneath it of what it is. So you can clearly kind of get everyone on the same page if you have other people that need to get bought into this.
Mhm.
So that is first part. But then we use empathy and data to inform those filters too. So with empathy, like I said before, empathy is all about trying to understand what your audience is thinking or feeling.
Yes.
So I've kind of come up with 4 different types of empathy filters, I call them, that you can use in storytelling to kind of, maybe it'll help jog some ideas. One is data informed empathy. And this is going to tie nicely when I get into data as well, even deeper. But
Mhm.
data informed is like, if you're doing research and you're looking and you're seeing, oh, hey, 46% of our audience has high school aged kids living at home. Okay,
Mhm.
that's okay. So you can kind of empathize and be like, okay, almost half of our audience has these high schoolers that are living at home. That's like a
Mhm.
data informed empathy.
Mhm.
But then SEO informed would say, okay, well, we can see that a really large percentage of people every month are searching for ways to better communicate with their teenagers.
Mm.
Oh, right. We're getting a little
Yeah, there we
deeper.
go.
So now we're like, they got the kids, and they're like, oh, okay. They're a big chunk of them seem to be like big, they need
Right.
help
Yeah.
communicating. Like then we're
Yep.
starting to get deeper in SEO. I love
Mhm.
SEO for insights on content strategies. And then you have like human informed empathy. So this is like I describe it as like shared feelings we can relate to with each
Mhm.
other.
Mhm.
So like that feeling like your kids are growing up too fast, or tax time and everyone's like, oh, I hate paying my taxes, just that frustration. Or for me it's like going to the grocery store and inevitably picking the longest freaking checkout line. I feel like it's the shortest one, and then I end up
Yes.
waiting. I don't know, everyone's going around me. I'm like, how did I pick the
Yep.
slowest like checkout
Every
person
time.
again every time? What is happening? Like there's those moments like of
Yes.
kind of those human
I love
informed
that.
shared
Yes.
feelings and things like
Yes.
that you could think about with your audience, like, what are those moments and feelings based on their life
Mhm.
and what, they're going through that you could talk about in your content to be relatable.
Yeah.
And then the last empathy filter I've seen is like nostalgia informed. And so
Mm.
nostalgia is such a powerful empathy
Oh, yeah.
filter.
Yep.
These are those key life moments and experiences that people
Mhm.
go through, like big chunks
Mhm.
of people will go through. So growing up in the same decade, or having the same favorite toy or cartoon growing up, um, going through a crisis together like we all did during the pandemic.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
it's those remember when, types of moments. And
Mhm.
you see this a lot with movies and on Netflix now. It's the remake
Mhm.
of all these popular shows
Yes.
that the
Yep.
parents used to watch when we were younger, and now we get to
Yep.
watch with our kids as like a remake, things like that. So those are all like really powerful empathy filters to try to get into like the mindset of how
Mhm.
our audience may be thinking or feeling. And then data is really what seals the deal. So when I start this process, actually, a lot of times I'll start with the data, because data
Mm.
paired with empathy is so powerful. Because
Yes.
then you're not just going off of like a gut, like, I think this is
Mhm.
what like they're doing. You can validate it, but you can also balance it with like the common sense of, I really think this, I'm hearing this, I'm seeing this,
Mhm.
I know this is happening. And it's the blend of the two, because I think as as communicators, as marketers, we we sometimes get pushed to lose the art in the art and science blend. I think of
Mhm.
things like we try to
Yes.
push so much the science of like metrics, improving everything out, and it has to be this certain way, and we lose that art of like the story and the and how the humanness, of how it can come across. So in my world, blending data and empathy is a great way to bypass any like naysayers. If you have anyone on your team that maybe is
Mm.
more left brain, right brain, this is a way to be
Yeah.
able to talk to both of them by saying, hey, this is just isn't just my opinion. We're seeing these things and this is why. So with data, I'll just give you a few examples, guys, of places you can look. So when you're doing data research for your content, it depends if you're one person or if you have a team. Obviously, you can go as deep into this as you want to, but my recommendation is always to look at least three different places, at least, like never less
Okay.
than three,
Yeah.
because otherwise, if you only look at data insights from one place, it's a little bit siloed, and you need to validate that with a few other places to say, is this the same thing over here? You might be like, well, on Instagram, we're seeing all of this,
Well,
but on LinkedIn, it's completely different. Like, there's different
yeah.
people in different places sometimes. And so you need to look holistically. And
Mhm.
I always think of this as putting my content like investigator hat on and
I
like
love
going and
that.
digging
Yeah.
through all the stuff. And I
Well,
like, and the goal is to look for trends. You're looking for things that
yes.
are
Okay.
repeating in different places.
Mhm. I was just gonna say for our listeners that in research, we call this triangulating your data.
There you go. There's an
Always at
official name
least
for
3
it.
in journalism, 3 sources need to confirm it. before you print it, or now it's like put it online. But yeah, so no, this is great. So we're looking for trends.
Yep, we're looking for
Love it.
trends. We're trying to triangulate that data. I love that. Yeah, because then when empathy is impaired with data, that's where the magic happens.
Hmm.
And so I love to look at SEO first usually.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite data sources. So search engine optimization, what are people typing into Google and the online
Mhm.
search places? Because it really is like a huge focus group, where you can see what people are searching for and what questions they have. You can't get granular to know, you know, 18-year-olds are searching for this, in search, it's generalized data of like
Mhm.
everyone who's typing it, but it's
Mhm.
such a good initial insight of what are people searching, because when people are typing things into Google,
Mhm.
they are doing it themselves. It's not filtered. Like you
That's
versus if
true.
you're in an actual focus group where people
Yeah.
are going to be like, "Oh, I'm not
There's
going
some
to actually
performance
answer this."
there,
Yeah, like I don't want
right?
you to think bad of me, so I'm not going to give you my real answer, kind of a thing. You get everyone's unfiltered searches. Like you can
Mhm.
see what they're looking for. So SEO is an amazing place, and answerthepublic.com is my favorite place to
Yep.
look. It's really affordable to be able to create an account there, and it gives you such rich insights of how what people are searching for related to your industry or different topics and keywords. This is where if you have ideas around your storytelling pillars, you can drop those pillar names into
Mhm.
a search tool to see like, well, what questions do people have around content marketing,
Mhm.
and boom, it gives you this whole big old list. And right there, those could be like tons of different types of contents and stories and that you could be creating to answer and be thinking about how you're answering what customers' questions are. So SEO is great. Social listening, you had mentioned that earlier in terms of
Mhm.
listening and doing those audits. Look at the communities where your audience is. What are they
Mhm.
saying? What are the questions? What's the tone? What's the vibe? Kind of picking up on that. Great example was during COVID, like early days of COVID. I was working at Sleep Number at the time, and one of the big insights I was seeing from different mom groups that I was in, and some online listening we were doing, was there was so much like extra mom guilt happening during that
Mm.
time of moms being like, well, I know I should wash the dishes, or I know I should do this, but I'm just so
Mm.
tired. And like, it was so much, it
Mhm.
was compounded. And moms are already notorious for being like putting guilt on ourselves anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was extra. And it was like the
Yeah.
should was like on steroids. And I just kept seeing it in every group I was in, every place. And so when we were creating some content, we said, you know what? This is a real emotion that not just moms are going through. Obviously, a lot of people were, but
Yeah.
we were especially seeing it. And so we just did a
Mhm.
small blog series. I think it was like 4 or 5 articles. And it was called Stop Shooting Yourself.
Oh,
And it was
yeah.
written by this amazing mom freelancer that we partnered with. And she
Mhm.
wrote this amazing series around um those feelings and the experiences that she was going through, and then we tied it back into like your overall wellness and how sleep is so integral,
Yeah.
an important
Yeah.
part of like you should sure those dishes you need, but it's okay, like go take a
Yeah.
nap, make sure you're getting plenty of sleep. Like how is this going to
Yeah.
help you just fuel you for your day, and how can we
Mhm.
help you do that even better? So and it performed so well, like
Oh, I
that content, it
bet.
resonated.
Yeah.
Moms were like, oh my gosh, it was getting shared all over the place, just those insights. So social listening is really important from that
Mhm.
perspective. And I recommend too, like, if you're a brand, listen in your own communities, of course, but look at your competitors or any aspirational brands around your category too,
Mhm.
because you want to hear what's the vibe in those communities. Is it the same as yours? Have you attracted the right people? Or maybe your
Mhm.
people are somewhere else. So you gotta look whole big picture. Also, if you do paid media, like advertisements, look at the results from that. What is or isn't working well? Like what
Yep.
messages have been resonating? Internal customer insights your company already has. Like, depending on the size of your company, a lot of times there's a ton of rich insights you already know about your
Mhm.
audience. So obviously, if you have that information, that's great to start there because you're already being
Yeah.
handed like a nice little it's a silver platter of
Yes.
insights.
Yes.
Customer loyalty programs are
Oh,
fantastic. So
yeah.
if your
Mhm.
business has a loyalty program, and there's ways to reach out to those customers that are in that loyalty program, will understand, like, what are they looking for? What can help them better? What are they liking, not liking? Just getting that feedback. Who are they? Like, talking to them, tapping into those owners of your product or services and users is a great way to build like real people into all of your content as well later on.
Yeah.
I love loyalty programs so much. Employee feedback, of course, like what are your employees saying? If you have a sales
Mhm.
force, what are they saying? Are like the top
Mhm.
problems or questions or things that they get asked, or what do they wish they had? Or if you're doing, obviously, there's internal communication. So if you're doing like PR and comms for internal comms, there's a whole audience there of really understanding them and what feedback they have. But that's huge because I generally do external marketing, external
Mhm.
communications.
Mhm.
Sometimes there's a disconnect between sales and marketing.
Yeah.
And how do you get them to blend more? And so this is a great opportunity for as a
Mhm.
marketing or comms or a PR group is, well, what is your sales team saying? And what are those employees like hearing if they're in the front
Mhm.
lines with your customers?
Right.
That's
Yep.
huge.
Mhm.
Um, and in addition to like the customer service team itself, do you have like a text line, a chat line, a call line, et cetera? Like they'll be keeping metrics around um what customers are asking for as well.
Mhm.
I remember doing this in the past for another client. We had identified there was certain questions that kept coming up that the customer service center was being asked to answer. So we created some content to answer those questions for them. So, and it actually helped reduce the call center volume, which saved the company a lot of money because if you could
Mhm.
estimate, well, it cost us X number of dollars for every call
Yeah,
that comes
sure.
in to answer.
Yeah.
Now we don't have to do that. So it's a great way
Yeah.
of how your content can actually save your company money,
Mm.
in addition to making
Right.
your company
It's like
money.
a yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Website traffic, like, website
Mhm.
analysis and analytics, any third party studies, if you don't have access to like if you don't have like someone handing you a silver platter of information,
Yeah.
you can buy it. You can partner with companies and teams that can give you more
Mhm.
insights on these things. And if you work with any agency partners, obviously
Mm.
always asking all of them, what insights do you have? Like tap into
Yeah.
all the resources you have. Or if,
Yep.
if you're a solopreneur, small business owner, tap into other small business owners that you know in the space and
Mhm.
just, idea sharing, what kind of information can you guys be helping each other out with and asking those
Mhm.
questions. So there's no excuse in my mind to not be able to find at least three,
Yeah,
sources to be able to look
absolutely.
at information.
Yeah.
And so you kind of like you're this content investigator, you're looking for this, you're triangulating, you're looking for these trends of what keeps popping up in multiple places.
Mm.
That's
I
your
love that.
bending ding, that's your low hanging fruit. And that's where you
Yeah.
start. Gosh, I keep seeing this sentiment, this feeling, this question, this topic come up no matter where I'm looking. That's something we should be talking about. And then you can think of, okay, well, does that ladder up to one of my ideas for a storytelling pillar? Or could that be the pillar? And then we create all this
Right.
content deep underneath this whole
Yes.
topic that as a
Yeah.
company, gosh, we haven't even, yeah, we sell that in our product is, but we've never even touched on this, piece.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of fun ways to kind of think about how this puzzle comes together.
I love it. Yeah.
But those are just several different ways that you guys can, different tools in your toolkit to like think about how do I get clear on what I'm talking about? And
Mhm.
then how do I go deeper to like help me actually understand throughout the rest of the year? What do I keep talking about?
No, thank you. I mean, I just feel like it's so much information. I know when I listen to this again, Sarah, I'm going to take like good notes because I think there's a lot of things that, and it is just a cycle, right? Like
Yeah.
you're just going to keep doing this over and over until and your audience could change. Like it's just the
Yeah.
strategy just keeps repeating itself as you get better and better at speaking with your audience and building community. I think that's like the goal at the end of at the end of all of this is like people, I always say this to clients and students too. The best brands are the ones who can, pivot maybe. I think we learned this in 2022. Like they could pivot really quickly because they have a built-in community. They have people that support them regardless of what they're doing. And I think that what you're talking about in terms of content strategy and building empathy, it's because they're connecting to the brand on that deeper level.
Mhm.
And I think that that's really important in any business strategy today. because we've
Yeah.
seen that happen over and over. So thank you again. I am so excited for all this knowledge. And as we wrap up today, I wanted to ask you: is there anything that you feel in this conversation that would help our listeners that we didn't get to talk about? But is there any like tidbit of information or piece that you think would really support them as they head into this work, this story branding work?
Yeah. I would say, like to summarize what I've said, if you're like, gosh, that's a lot. I do need to go back and listen to like the
Mhm.
notes. But if nothing else, think about your customer as the hero and start with
Mm,
them. Think, what's the empathy filter? Why are they going to care
mm,
about what I'm talking about? If you just ask yourself that question, it's going to improve your content a lot because you're going to just force yourself to stop and be like, okay, am I just like talking to myself and does this sound all like me, or is it actually starting with what is their problem? How do I talk about that first and then get into how I can help solve it? So that's just going to go
mm.
so far in what you do is really putting that lens on everything. So that would be, I would say at a minimum, let's start there, and it's going
Yeah.
to help improve your content so much.
That's a great piece of advice. Thank you. So we do have a sort of round robin ending to these,
Mm,
Sarah. So we have three questions for you.
okay.
The first one is, what is your favorite story? And this could be like a movie, a song, a book, like any form
Oh
of
my gosh.
story.
Okay, so a story that I'm loving right now is actually a small business owner, and she runs her own company called Tonic.
Mhm,
And it's a website template company that does show it website templates specifically. But
mhm.
her name is Jen Olmsted. Okay, Jen Olmsted is like the best storyteller in emails that I've seen in a very, very long time,
Cool.
because this woman, she should write a book, to be honest. I'm hoping someday she like mashes these all into a book. She is such a great example if you're interested about how to like help your personal brand, and how like
Mm,
someone within the company can help personify and humanize a brand. She's done an incredible job because on the surface they're making website templates. Okay. Well, she does these I think maybe they're weekly, every other week or so emails, and she comes out and they're always storytelling driven,
I
and
love
they're
it.
funny, and she shares stories about her past, and there's always something that's going on, and she it's just brilliant. Like, you just love this woman. Like, I want to be her best friend. I don't even know this woman, but
I
after reading
love
all of
that.
her emails, that's the power of story, right? It creates
Yes.
connections with
You feel like
people.
you know her.
I feel like I
Yeah.
know her. And I'm like, oh, this is hilarious. Like, these just like funny things. Like, she just shared this one about her and her husband, how they went on, they were gonna go on this big magical vacation to like another country. And then right when they got to the airport, they realized they needed a visa. They had no idea. No one had ever told them they needed a visa.
Oh
And they
no.
they were gonna lose out on their Airbnb in this other country. And like there was all this stuff that was
Oh.
happening in this series, and how they ended up like driving to the Washington D.C. consulate to get an emergency visa the next day after she like begged and pleaded, and it was just hilarious. And then she's going through it and how there was like unexpected things that happened throughout the
Okay.
course. So their
Yeah.
dream vacation and staying in this Airbnb in this other country ended up getting delayed a few days. But in the interim, they got to stay in this really, the airport actually upgraded them to this amazing luxury like hotel, and they said that actually ended up being the best part of their whole vacation.
I love
But it was
it.
such a great, and then she related into like, in business, as business
Yeah, things
owners,
don't
like,
always go as
things don't always go the
planned.
way, and like, and
Right.
how and then transitions it always so wonderfully to like her products and her offerings and new things that she
Ooh,
has
I'm
for
definitely gonna
companies.
check her out,
Yeah.
Sarah. That's
And it's
awesome.
and it's like it's so interesting because there's so many rules around or you hear rules around how long
Mm,
or how short things should be in terms of content and what people's attention spans are. Her
yeah,
emails are really long. They're super long, and I read every single time.
because she's a good
Um
storyteller,
because she's
like you
such a good
said. She's
story.
got you
Exactly.
hooked.
Yeah,
I
so
love it.
she right now, Jen Olmsted from Tonic, is like hands down a great example
Oh my
of
gosh.
a leader at a company helping drive and humanize her brand.
I love that. Okay, definitely gonna check her out. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Second question is, what is the best piece of storytelling advice you've ever heard? You just have to share it with us. And or this is an and or the worst advice you've ever heard that you need to warn us about.
Mm. Okay, well, the best piece, I think two things are popping into my head. One is like funny from my past boss and how that transitions to like what I was talking about today, which is I had a boss in the past and she would always have this phrase and she'd say, "We're staring at our belly buttons." And I was like, "What the heck are you talking about?" She's like, "We're just like talking to ourselves. We're like looking down into our belly buttons and using our own words and saying what only we understand and care about. Our customer has no freaking
Oh,
idea what this means." Like she would say, but she would say, "We're staring at our belly buttons." And
belly
so I thought
buttons.
that
I
was
love that.
so smart, right? But
Yeah.
it's kind of a funny visual, but it's like, yeah, okay. We're just talking
Mhm.
to ourselves here.
Mhm.
So don't stare at your belly buttons. Um, and then that ties in so well to like really what I was sharing today around make your customer the hero. Like
Mhm.
you as the brand are their guide. And
Mhm.
the when you think about any story, like companies are like, well, no, we want to be like the main one in the story. I always say, gosh, you guys, the guide is the strong person in the story. The
Right.
hero, they're
Yeah.
the one that's confused and bloodied and battered
Yeah.
and worn out and
They're going through
overwhelmed.
it.
You don't want to be them. You want to be the
I
guide in this place of power that can help guide them out of that. So that
love
is the
that.
stronger element.
Yes.
So
Oh, I love that. Thank
yeah,
you. Yeah.
yes. So
That's
that would be it.
great.
Those are my two top best ones. I don't know what my worst piece of advice
Hopefully
is.
you blocked it out.
Yeah, I probably have, right? Because then I'll be like, well, that was stupid. I'm not gonna
I'm not
listen to
using
that.
that.
I don't know. I honestly can't think of a bad
No,
one,
that's
but
okay.
those are good.
Yeah.
So those are my two top
Those are great. And I love
advice.
that. Thank you for both of those. And then the last question is how do you define storytelling in your own words?
Yeah. So storytelling is really how you as a company can better connect with your audiences through the power of that connection, like trying to understand what they're thinking, what they're feeling, using that power of empathy to hook them and go a level deeper with them through the power of words, images, videos. There's a lot of different mediums and ways we can do it, but we need to be able to share the stories of how we can help them
Mhm.
in a way that resonates with them. And so that's really the power of storytelling in a business.
I love that. Thank you so much. And thanks so
Yeah.
much for your time today, Sarah. If listeners want to work with you or want to follow you and learn more, what are the ways that they can do that?
Oh, I love that. Yes. Check out my website at kindredspeak.com. I have a great new 40-second quiz on there if anyone's
Nice.
interested to try to figure out like what content strategy makeover might be right for your brand. I have this fun quiz. I framed it all around like a home makeover show.
Oh, I
So you can
love
answer
that.
some questions, pretend you're a home, and see like what makeover would relate to your brand. I give you some great tips and actionable steps you can take depending on what your answers are. So that only takes 40 seconds. So that's right on my website at kindredspeak.com. And I'm very active on LinkedIn at Sarah Panus. You can find me there. Or if you want to go deeper into marketing with empathy and you're a brand that is interested in targeting moms, tune into my Marketing with Empathy podcast. It's really a podcast for brands that want to target moms and how we do it with more empathy and do it better in the work that we do.
Thank you so much. And I just will plug I love your podcast, Sarah. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for all the work you do there to educate us. And we can just get more of you and your guests there too. So,
Thank
yeah,
you so
thanks again
much.
for your time. This was awesome.
We're so glad you've listened to this podcast episode. If you liked it, would you mind doing us a favor? Share this episode with someone who would be interested in the topic too. We're on a mission to help everyone become a better storyteller. And don't forget to subscribe to the show to get updated every time we release a new episode. Each and every episode is produced, hosted, and edited by us, Meg and Kyle Adams at Home Place Creative. Happy storytelling!